Hi, this is Alex with Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters in Roselle. I'm here today to talk about our July 2026 Club Coffee, a coffee from Thailand. Check it out. So just as a reminder, the Club Coffee program here at Maple Leaf is something that we do where we bring in a members-only coffee every month, roast it 3 different ways, send out a bunch of notes and information about the coffee to our club members for them to be able to choose which one of those 3 roasts that they would like to get for that month. The club program is a members-only program. There is always a wait list associated with it, but I'm always taking folks to add to that wait list. So if you are interested, drop us an email. You'll find our contact information on our website, and we'll be able to add you to that wait list. So we've actually had a coffee from Thailand way back in the club history. I believe when I checked last, it was somewhere around the 2021 neighborhood. And it was the only time that we actually had the Thai coffee before. And over time, of course, a lot of turnover happens in the club, so we get some new members coming in. There's been a few folks that have been with us since we started the club back in early 2020. But this is one that I do like to kind of bring in once in a while to kind of show people what a fun Asia Pacific coffee is like. Thai coffee does share a lot in common with some coffees from, say, places like Vietnam, in that the country has generally produced a lot of Robusta coffee and not Arabica coffee. Robusta coffee is, of course, the low-grade, non-specialty coffee that most of us, if you're of a certain age, probably grew up drinking. That is the instant powdered coffee, the kind of high caffeine, low quality, not that great tasting sort of stuff that you maybe still get at an airport vending machine, if that is a thing that you've done any time in your life. They have started to move into Arabica coffee more so in the last 10 to 15 years, very similar to the shift that Vietnam has been going through. And when we've had some coffees from Vietnam, they've all been Arabica grade coffees, just like this coffee from Thailand is as well. And those are coffees that do get you to experience a different flavor profile than anything that you might see from a coffee from Central America or Africa even. It does share some similarities in the flavor profile with those coffees, but sometimes these coffees do have a distinct characteristic to them that makes them easier to drink, simpler, sweeter, and maybe something that just kind of takes what you would expect from other coffees in parts of the world and sort of adds this twist to it that I think is really fun and exotic and different for our club members to try. So this is a wash process coffee. It is a kind of higher chaff coffee as well, something that was a little bit surprising. We'll talk about the roast a little bit later. But generally speaking, wash process coffees are very clean, consistent, uniform in size and shape, and they generally are not on the chaffier side of coffee. The chaff, of course, being the skin that is on the coffee bean itself that usually comes off more so the darker you roast the coffee. And these 3 roasts this month, I think, are a little impressive in the sense that they're very similar to one another in the overall flavor profile. And it did remind me of one of those things that I do like to explain to people every once in a while about the roast profiles in coffee and what they do to the flavor. That explanation usually goes something like: the lighter you roast the coffee, the more you taste the coffee itself. The darker you roast the coffee, the more you taste how it's roasted. The other parallel that I will paint in that explanation to people is if anyone has ever eaten a piece of meat from a smoker before, it's not dissimilar from what happens to a piece of meat when you put it on, say, a propane grill versus on a smoker, where it might be the same input, but the way it tastes is kind of a function of the way it was prepared. And that is something that doing a dark roast profile on a coffee will generally do, move it to more of the roast profile kind of territory. But this is a fun coffee in the sense that even amongst these 3 different roast profiles, the light, medium, and dark, there is so much similarity between them that I think that if you were really just not paying close attention, you might be able to mistake the medium for the dark for the medium, the light for the medium. You're definitely not going to mistake the light and the dark from being distinctive coffees. But I think the 2 closest roast levels themselves will be very similar to one another in a lot of ways that I think is kind of an interesting characteristic of the coffee itself. So let's start out with the light roast this month. I thought all 3 of these coffees were very low acidity, the light roast especially. This guy had a kind of light creaminess to it, a subtle nuttiness to it that isn't super on the front part of the palate, but it will definitely be something that you notice when you take a sip. A nice pleasant sweetness, not sharp, not tart, not anything that's really going to overwhelm you, but very impressive in the kind of pleasant sweet flavors that you get here. And that kind of nutty plus honey feel reminded me a little bit of a mix between a Guatemalan and a Honduran coffee, coupled with the kind of nuttiness, which is something you might see in a Peru or a Papua New Guinea coffee. I think made this quite pleasant. Very creamy aftertaste as well on this coffee. Easy to drink. Fun for a light roast to be something that is very consumable, very easy to drink without noticing that you're drinking too much of a light roast coffee. I'd say if you're a person that normally is averse to light roast coffees, this might be worth a shot this month because you're going to get that nice pop of a light roast flavor without too much of the harshness of a light roast that you normally see with acidity levels being a little bit higher. Moving on to the medium roast coffee this month, this is where we turned into the conventional, more chocolatey, creamy, richer, bigger flavor. Very subtle in a lot of ways though. A nice kind of balance in this coffee. It reminded me a little bit of some of the other coffees that we've had in the past where they have a very round taste to them. And when we describe a coffee as round, what we're kind of meaning is that you're getting a little bit of everything kind of all in one in terms of the flavor profile that it offers, but not too much of any one thing. Had a kind of a brown sugar malty texture to it as well. It wasn't super strong, not super heavy. I think that the medium roast this month is a nice sweet spot because you do get that maltier, richer texture along with the creaminess that we saw in the light roast, but you get a richer flavor that you normally see out of a medium without sacrificing really on the flavor. And in fact, you pick up the different kind of chocolatey flavor that I think is kind of pleasant. It reminded me a little bit of a coffee from Peru in some ways. It still had kind of that subtle caramel aroma to it as well. And the nuttiness was still there that we saw in the light, just not as much of a honey kind of feel to it that we saw in the light roast as well. Great medium roast this month. You're not really going to sacrifice on flavor if you choose that option. It's just going to be a nice, balanced, easy drinking cup, not challenging by any means whatsoever. Moving on to the dark roast, this is where we normally see our heavier flavors out of a coffee. I think this is another one of those dark roasts that we have had similar dark roasts in the past, where you get a nice kind of collection of the original coffee flavor in it with a little bit of the heavier texture that you normally expect from a dark roast coffee. It still had the same malty kind of feel to it that we saw in the medium roast. That creaminess was still there. The chocolatey kind of flavor is a little bit more prominent. And this one actually gained an interesting flavor that we didn't see in the light or the medium and had a little bit of a citrusy tone to it. Generally speaking, citrus kind of as a flavor is usually something we'll see more in a light or medium flavor profile for a lot of the club coffees and general coffees that we have on the shelves here at Maple Leaf. But this is where I actually saw a little bit of that lemon kind of feel that I think was an interesting characteristic to see in a dark roast, not something that you see super often in a dark roast coffee of any kind. So it is one of those dark roast coffees that has just a lot of character to it that I think is a refreshing change of pace. If you're a person that normally stays away from a dark roast coffee just because you think it loses too much character, too much texture and flavor as a result of that dark roast profile, this might be a nice option for this month because you're really not going to sacrifice too much on the flavor. In fact, what you're going to pick up in the dark roast this month compared to the light and the medium is that maltier feel to it. There's still sugary kind of taste that's a little bit of like a caramelized sugar kind of feel to it as well. And there's a very tiny bit of a spice note in this. It's not quite a cinnamon, it's not quite a nutmeg, but it's just kind of a mix of a couple of things that in some ways reminded me a little bit of what a dark roast from an African coffee flavor profile would look like. As far as the roast profile goes on this coffee, it was very easy to roast overall, not an aggressive or challenging coffee by any means. The only signature characteristic that I'd point out from the roasting process for this coffee this month is that it actually produced a lot more chaff than I'd expect for a wash process coffee. And you'll see in the pictures, there's more chaff in this coffee, even at the dark roast level, than I would expect from any wash process coffee, no matter the origin. So that's an interesting characteristic. It is something that I'm not sure. I actually have done a ton of research to see about coffee from Thailand to see if that's a signature element. But it's just one of those interesting things that when I open up the chaff collector on the coffee roaster, the sample roaster at least, to clean it out, there's a lot more going on there than I expected to see. So interesting roast level for a roast process for this month for this coffee as well. Not a bad option amongst the three this month. I don't think I'm going to be able to name a favorite for myself, but there are some really great options for every club member this month, no matter your flavor profile. If the club program sounds interesting to you, like I said, make sure to send us an email and we'll be able to add you to the wait list. And if you're interested in all the other things going on here at Maple Leaf, just make sure to either check our website or subscribe to our channel, where you'll get all the videos of the new coffees that we have coming out here at Maple Leaf every month. Hope to catch you next time for another Club Coffee video. Take care.